Hi there, welcome to episode 12, Compositing. The rendering process took about 52 hours. Let's check the rendered images. Go to the menu and select Render, then Emplay and select Load these files. Search for the mass crypto images. Play the animation. The object masks are OK. Now go to the menu, select File, then Open and search for the splash images. Play the animation. It's OK. Check other planes. For instance, let's check the Direct Reflect channel. Play the animation. It's OK. Let's also check one of the light planes. The right light plane. Play the animation. It's OK. Now let's start talking something about compositing. Digital compositing and visual effects are a world apart. The Foundry Nuke is well known as an industry standard for these tasks. You also have Blackmagic Fusion, which now is integrated into DaVinci Resolve. Both programs, like Houdini, have a node-based approach. If you are familiar with any of these programs, you better do your compositing in any of them. You could even use After Effects, which is not node-based, but a layer-based software. An important thing to consider is that Fusion comes integrated into DaVinci Resolve, which has a fully functional free version, and even the paid version is extremely cheap. However, Houdini also offers compositing tools, and of course, the approach is node-based. All these tools, you can find them in the image or compositing context. The workflow, as in any compositing software, is the same. You load images and planes, then you process the data and planes. You apply filters and effects, and then you render the final image. Okay, to start compositing, we have to go to the compositing network. But first, restore the bottom pane and minimize the top pane. Move the vertical divider to have more room to work with. Now go to the compositing or image context. Here we have an empty network called Com1. Rename it as /com and dive inside. We are in the compositing context, and here you can right-click or press Tab to display the operator or tool categories. Here we have color tools, compositing tools, effect tools, export tools, import tools, keying tools, manager tools, math tools, and other useful tools. Let's also select the composite view. To load the render images, use a file node. Press Tab, type File, and press Enter twice. Press the P key to display the parameters. Houdini loads a default image. In the file parameter, search for the first render. In this case, the background. In the view bar, press the Fit to Viewport button to frame the image. Using Alt and drag, make 2 copies of the file node. Select the second one and search for the splash sequence. Select the third one and search for the crypto masks. At the moment, we can see the 3 images because all of them have the display flag checked. To compare images is OK. Click on the display flag of the background node. Now only this image is shown in the viewport. click on the Fit to Viewport button. It's not working. Let's try to zoom in on the image. Let's try again the Fit to Viewport button. Okay, it's working now. So we have our background, which is a static image. If you move the timeline, you can see it's the same image. Then the splash sequence. If you move the timeline, you can see the different frames. And in the view bar, you can check the extra planes. And finally, the mass crypto sequence. The same. In the timeline, you can see the different frames. The first basic operation to do is to place the splash sequence over the background. Press Tab and go to the Comps menu. Here you can see different tools for compositing images. Select the Layer tool. Connect the background and the splash to the Layer node. In this node, the default operation is over. It's okay, but you have other options to choose from according to your needs. So, we have the background, then the splash, and the Layer node place one image over the other. Change the display flag to the Layer node. Okay, we have finished the composition. Well, not so fast. To practice some basic composite operation, we do have some issues with the image. The overall image is too dark, especially the background. The shadows on the left part of the splash are too dark. The borders of the splash are too sharp, and the raspberry needs some color adjustments. Okay, let's start with these tasks. Press Tab and go to the Color menu. Here you can choose many tools to brighten the image. Choose the Level tool and drag it after the background node. Press P to show the parameters. Increase the gamma parameter to see the effect. Leave it at 1.1. We could also scale the background to reduce the shadows. Press Tab, go to the Transform menu and select Transform. Drag the node after the Level node to connect it. Increase the X scale to 1.1. To decrease the shadows in the splash, we could use the channel with the fill light information. This information is in the splash sequence, so we just need to extract it. To do this, we need a channel copy node. Press Tab, go to the Utility menu and select Channel Copy. Connect it to the splash file node and change the display flag to this node. The target is the color channel and the source is the fill light, so we have the fill light information in the color channel. Now we can add this information to our splash. To do this, you guess we need an Add node. Press Tab, go to the Comps menu and select Add. The Add node has input ports for foreground and background. Connect the Channel Copy node to the foreground port and the File node to the background port. Change the display flag to the Add node. That is too much. With the foreground weight parameter, we can control the amount of the fill light channel we want to add. Decrease it to 0.2 because we don't want to lose contrast. Let's also brighten the foreground objects. Press Tab, go to the Color menu and instead of the Levels node, try the Color Correct node. Connect it after the Add node and change the display flag to the Color Correct node to see the effect. As we did in the Levels node for the background, Here we also have a gamma parameter to adjust the brightness of the midtones. Increase it to 1.1. Let's suppose we need to warm the tone of the highlights. To do this, we just need to multiply our image by a warm value. Click on the mold parameter and select a warm tone, let's say 30. Now increase the saturation to test. We don't need too much, leave it at 0.02. Now, to smooth the edges of the foreground objects, we could erode them first and then blur them. And as we are modifying the alpha, we will need to pre-multiply it by the modified alpha. Change the display flag to the layer node. Press Tab and go to the Effects menu. Here we can find the Dilate Erode tool. Select it and connect it after the color correction node. To get the erode effect, we need a negative value for the size parameter. Decrease it to -1. At the moment, all the image is affected, but we only need to erode the alpha channel, not the color channel. So, go to the Mask tab and in the plane scope disable the RGB channels and just leave the alpha channel checked. To see the final effect on the alpha channel, we need to pre-multiply the image by the modified alpha channel. Press Tab, go to the Utility menu, select the pre-multiplied node and connect it after the Edge Blur node. In the pre-multiply node, the default values are OK. Now press Tab and go to the Effects menu. To blur the mask, we could use the Blur tool or the Edge Blur tool. Select the Edge Blur tool and connect it after the Dilate Erode node. You can toggle the bypass flag to see the effect. With the blur size parameter, we can control the smoothness of the mask edges. Reduce the value to 2. OK, we have smooth edges for the foreground objects. To adjust the color of the raspberry, we need the masks we saved in the mask crypto file. Change the display flag to the mask crypto node. Remember, this is an image sequence, and you could think of pulling a key from these colors to get the masks, but it's not needed. Houdini has a crypto matte node that helps us with this task. Drag the output port of the file node. Press Tab, go to the matte menu and select the crypto matte node. Change the display flag to the crypto matte node and press P to view the parameters. Now you can click to pick a color on the image to define a mask. Select the raspberry. In the matte selection section, the name of the selection has been specified. Now you can use the output of this node to mask operations only to the raspberry. Restore the display flag to the layer node and make some room to insert a color correction node. Press Tab, go to the color menu and select the color correction node and drag it after the color correction 1 node. If we make changes to the parameters, of course they affect the whole image, but we just want to affect the raspberry. So connect the output port of the crypto matte to the mask port of the color correction node. Now the changes are limited to the raspberry. Restore the gamma parameter by holding Ctrl and pressing the middle click mouse button. Let's add more red to the raspberry. To do this, multiply the image by a small amount of red. Click on the mold color. The hue 0 is already selected, which corresponds to red. Now try increasing the saturation to see the effect. Not too much. 0.1 is enough. What about if your client or your supervisor asks you to decrease the reflections on the raspberry? The technical approach would be to return to the raspberry material, increase the roughness, and render again. But here in Compositing, we can make some adjustments without the need to render again. Remember, we made use of the Fill Light pass to add light to our composition using an Add node. In the same way, we could make use of the Reflection pass, not to add, but to subtract the reflections to solve our requirement. Duplicate the channel copy node, press Alt and drag the node. OK, change the source. Search for the Direct Reflect channel. Now press Tab and go to the Comps menu. Select Subtract and place the node. Connect the output port of the Add node to the background input of the Subtract node. Connect the output port of the Channel Copy node to the foreground input of the Subtract node, and connect the output port of the Subtract node to the Color Correction node. We have an issue because the Subtract node is subtracting all the channels, including the alpha channel. To avoid messing with the alpha channel, go to the Mask tab and disable the alpha. Return to the Subtract tab. Now, with the foreground weight, we can control how much of the reflections are subtracted. At the moment, all the image is affected. Connect the output of the Cryptomatte to the mask input of the Subtract node. In this way, the effect is limited to the raspberry. Reduce the foreground weight to 0.3. Let's check our layout. Press P to hide the parameters and press H to frame all the nodes. I think we have addressed all the tasks. Let's render the composition to see the result. Click on the output port of the layer node. Drag. Press Tab, go to the Export menu and select the RAW file output node. Press P to display the parameters. Rename the node as Splash-Out B01. Set the valid frame range to Render Frame Range. The start and end frame are OK. To specify the path and the file name, we have the output picture parameter. Modify the path to save it in the comp folder and take into account that $OS stands for the name of the current node. We are using the Pick and See extension, which stands for Pick Non-Commercial Format. Let's correct the path. We could use an OpenEXR extension, but in that case you will get a watermark on the images. In the Plane Scope parameter, we only need the color information, so delete the alpha channel. We are ready. Press the Render button. It took 27 seconds to render the sequence. Now we can check the result. Go to the menu and select Render, then Mplay and select Load Disk Files. Search for the rendered images in the COM folder. Play the animation. The second half of the animation is OK, but we have some issues with the initial frames. The mesh is a little bumpy and too dark during the initial frames. Close the Mplay window. To solve these issues, we could add a blur node and a levels node. Then we can keyframe the properties to start with some effect for the initial frames and then decrease the effect for the rest of the frames. But we don't want to affect the raspberry, so we need the raspberry mask but inverted. Let's start. Press Tab, go to the Effects menu and select Blur and drag it after the layer node. Again, press Tab, go to the Color menu and select Levels and drag it after the Blur node. Change the display flag to the Levels node. Go to frame 80. Press Alt and left-click on the gamma parameter to set a keyframe. Select the Blur node. Reduce the blur size to a small amount, 0.5 is OK, and press Alt and left-click on the size parameter to set a keyframe. Now go to frame 40. Increase the blur size. Press Alt and left-click on the size parameter to set a keyframe. Again, increase the blur size, let's say 10. Select the Levels node and increase the gamma parameter. Press Alt and left-click on the gamma parameter to set a keyframe. Again, increase the gamma parameter to 1.2. Go to the animation editor. Press F to frame the gamma curve and decrease the initial slope. Now select the Blur node. Press F to frame the size frame and decrease the initial slope. Return to the composite view. Now, to limit the effect outside the raspberry, let's use the raspberry mask but inverted. Drag the output port of the Cryptomatte node. Press Tab, go to the Pixel Up menu and select Invert. Finally, connect the output port of the Invert node to the mask input of the Blur node and also to the mask input of the Levels node. In this way, the blur and levels don't affect the raspberry. Let's add a global blur vignette effect. Press Tab, go to the Matte menu and select Ramp. In the ramp parameter, select Concentric. In Global Interpolation, select Easy In, Easy Out. Now, to place a blur node, press Tab, go to the Effects menu, select Blur, and place it after the Levels node. Change the display flag to the Blur node. Increase the blur size to 8. At the moment, the blur is affecting the whole image. Connect the output port of the ramp node to the mask input of the Blur node. Nothing happened. It's because the mask input is trying to read alpha information, but the ramp node is providing color information. In the Blur node, go to the Mask tab and change the mask input from alpha to color. Now it's working. To finish the composition, let's increase the contrast. Press Tab, go to the Color menu, select Levels, and drag the node after the last Blur node. Change the display flag to the Levels node. Decrease the gamma to 0.9 and also decrease the white point in the input levels parameter to 0.8. Select the raw file output node. Let's render again the sequence. If you wish, you could save a new version. Let's change it to V02 and render. It took 34 seconds to render. Press P to hide the parameters. Press H to frame the nodes. Now we can check the result. Go to the menu and select Render, then Mplay and select Load these files. Search for the render images in the COM folder. Maximize the Mplay window. Play the animation. Just to test, increase the frame rate from 24 to 36. Play the animation. I think it's better at this speed. Okay, we have finished the compositing process, but thanks to the node-based workflow, at any moment you can tweak any parameter or include additional tools to process the image according to your artistic skills. And you will probably get a better result than mine. With this video, section 03 Quick Start in Houdini is finished. And with this last section, the 3D Artist Guide to Houdini is also finished. I hope it has been helpful for you, and I also hope you continue practicing and learning more about this powerful software. Thank you for watching this video. I'll see you soon in the next one.